I'm Emma Ewing. I'm the founder of a specialist training company, Big Fish Training. We train people in PR and comms, and that's what I do. I help people with their impact, with their communication with stakeholders and clients, and of course, a lot of that is around confidence. Big question to start with. Absolutely. So, imposter syndrome, I guess, is the voice in your head that says something like, they're going to find out that I'm not as good as I should be, or I'm not as good as they think I am. So it's that tricky little voice. And it really messes with your confidence. In fact, for some people, I would say that actually the phrase imposter syndrome has got connotations really of being a shorthand for lack of confidence, particularly at work. So if somebody says to me they've got imposter syndrome, sometimes it isn't classically imposter syndrome and going to be found out. It's just I don't feel very confident with what I'm doing. I feel insecure. Yeah, absolutely. So why do we get it? Is really common, actually, especially among people who set high standards for themselves. So I don't know if you can think of anyone like that, Amanda, in our industry. Exactly. And people who are in jobs that require doing new things. So again, it's an absolute kind of, issue for our industry and dealing with challenges. So it's definitely for anyone in communications. And actually, probably in terms of crisis comms, that's when it pops up too. Well, absolutely. And it does pop up. So it doesn't just sit there all the time. I mean, for many people, it's situational. So it's entirely normal. And I did want to stress that it's completely normal to feel like this. It just means you're human and you care about what you're doing. But when something like so high pressure, it's going to be times when lots is going on, or you get a promotion, perhaps, or you get a new job or a really high stakes thing like a break-in crisis when there's so much new information to take on. I think it would be really weird if you sailed through like this all that uncertainty, just thinking, yeah, I'm just quietly confident about this. That those are the points, and it's triggered by those situations. And if you think about, I realise I'm going the long way around to answer your question, and I hope that's okay.
Okay.
Well, because I'm thinking about maybe this might be reassuring to people how it affects them. I understand is, let's say you got a new job. It's really normal to feel nervous, not just when you're starting, but also, is this good enough? Am I good enough? And think that the work isn't good enough. Because what's if you think about what's happened, you became really, really good at your old job. So good that you wanted a new challenge. And the ambition then comes at a cost because you've stepped into something new. So everything's new, and you don't necessarily have the same frameworks to look at. So you've got to grow into that role. It would be weird if you got a promotion and then everything was easy. It probably means you need another promotion. So what it does in those cases is it makes you overthink. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that I hear. People come to me for coaching and they've just tied themselves up in knots because that, yeah. You
Yeah,
see
yeah.
that with people in a crisis?
Yeah, I think definitely you have a tendency to do the what ifs and want the right answer. And when in like lots of situations, but definitely in crisis, there isn't a right and wrong answer. You just do the best you can at that point in time. That's hard, given what
Yeah.
you were saying about how people may respond and react and what they might do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is that uncertainty because we all our brains like certainty. That certainty really helps us. That's why we're good with routines, we're good with things that we know. And so actually we overcompensate with imposter syndrome. So we try to give ourselves some certainty. So I suspect that lots of people can relate to massively over preparing. Yeah, Just- yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And I think we're all guilty of that. And it's great to be prepared. Please don't anyone take this as don't be prepared. Please be prepared. It's great. But it's that over preparation for absolutely everything that could come along. And like you say, with a crisis, you don't know what's necessarily going to come along. You can be prepared, but you don't know for sure what people are going to be saying. Um, that also then ties in with things like working late and just really really setting yourself these high standards and then just burning yourself out sometimes to prove it. And I think also there is something around proving yourself. I know people that just constantly take um, extra courses, get extra qualifications. And again, you and I both know it's really fun to learn. We like to learn new things, but it's when it tips over into it's almost self-sabotage, like I'll only be good enough when, but that goalpost moves every single time. Um, I think it just the last thing to say is that a massive one, and for me, if I'm experiencing imposter syndrome, that the way it takes me is procrastination.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I just because if you don't start something, you can't fail it. If you don't start something, it's always good in your head. And I think that's awful because it just slows you down. You're slow on everything or you don't get started.
So is there like there is an optimum kind of feeling to get to, and then, like you said, that tipping point. So it's like manageable imposter syndrome, and then where it becomes unmanageable.
Yeah, I think so because it's like I think most people would agree, and I think loads of people are I don't know, quite accepting of aspects of their imposter syndrome because actually there's something about a bit of adrenaline when you're trying to do something that's challenging. I think that does keep us motivated. It's quite nice to nail something that was hard. So yeah, I suspect there's a sweet spot, and the big kind of thing about that is probably one of the tips for overcoming it is some self-awareness. Just actually think, hang on a moment, what am I doing here? And name it. The cliche is name it to tame it. But I quite like that because it makes us stop and think, oh, hang on a minute. This feels a bit like when I go into imposter syndrome, and that can sometimes help to take some of its power away. There's so many things that you could do. So I've tried to narrow it
Yeah.
down to a few things that seem to be helpful for most people.
Yeah.
And my advice would be it's such an individual thing, and the situations you face are so individual. Try something, but don't be afraid if it doesn't work for you. It's really about then thinking, well, what else can I try?
Mm.
So there's some classic advice, and well, this is interesting. I'm a bit skeptical about this. So let me tell you the classic advice, which I know does work for some people, um, is when you're going through that, oh, I'm not good enough. Is this good enough? Ask yourself, what's actually true? What
Mm.
evidence do I have? And you'll normally find that you've got more than enough. If you go through, look at your bio or something, because imposter syndrome strikes when I should have mentioned really, we compare ourselves to others. So you might be on a
Yeah.
panel and you look at everybody else and think, oh, they're so much better than me. Why am I here? And so name it to tame it, but then look at the evidence. Well, I've done this, I've done that. They've asked me for a reason. However, I've got a slightly different take on that because I'm not sure that when you're in imposter syndrome, you can be that logical. Okay. I don't think that's, you can say it, but I'm not sure that it necessarily convinces you. So, because you're in a place of self-judgment. So, what I would say is you need to do the work ahead of time. So, the evidence works, but not in the moment. So, what this is about is strengthening what's called your um, internal validation loop. So, in other words, you telling yourself, oh, I'm all right, actually, or this work was quite good, or these people thought I was good and I'm happy with that. So, keep a record of things as you go along, of things that have gone well, any nice feedback you've had, any nice comments that you've had. That really helps because when your mean voices crop up again, then you can actually look back on those. And because you've been looking at them ahead of time, you're just topping up that validation bank. So you've probably heard of a smile file.
No, I don't think I
Ah,
have.
well, there's a new set of words for you. I love a bit of a glib couplet. So a smile file is simply, normally it's an email folder, but where someone said a really nice thing like, hey, thanks, Amanda, that was absolutely fantastic. Or wow, Amanda, you explained it to me in a way that no one else has managed to. Then
Mm,
that's for the smile file, and you put it in there.
okay.
And don't just save it for the gloomy days. Have it for the days when you think, I'm just going to have a look at what was in here because it can really, really help. Um, there's something else that you can do, which is all about process. So I'm quite boring about process when it comes to personal skills because I think if we leave it to luck, it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily work. So when you're about to do something, do a job, even with a crisis, I would say it's perfectly possible to, when you're in that team briefing, is to think, how will I know when I've done a good job on this?
Mm,
Because you're
yeah.
basically setting your standards. How good is good enough? And
Mm,
set it in advance. Because again, this stuff can really creep, can't it? You can do something. I do it all the time, like with a course. I'll think, I'll deliver it, it's good, and then I'll go back and think, well, I can make it even better, which is fun, but at some point, something's got to give.
yeah, I think
um,
that's a really important one for crisis because I say this a lot that you need to know what good looks like because it will vary depending on what the situation is you're dealing with. So I think that's going to be a really important one for anybody feeling it in that sort of crisis or incident management scenario.
Yeah, I think so. It's really like how, and as a team, you can ask that actually. It's like, how do we know when we're doing a good job? How do we know what good enough is like? What does that look like for us? And
Mm,
it might be around, I mean, you're the expert here, not me, but in terms of team, it might be around, have we worked together as a team? Are
yeah.
we making the most of all our resources? Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things is that you could ask yourself in the moment. So it's important to build up ahead of time, but in the moment when you find yourself procrastinating or overworking or simply self-doubt, is to ask yourself, what's driving me right now? Okay. And is it a genuine desire to improve, or am I trying to prove myself to others?
Mm,
And that can be really helpful, even at the point of perhaps just logging onto a meeting or going into a meeting. It's like, am I improving myself? Have I got a contribution to make in this meeting? Or am I going in there to try and prove myself to others? And it's okay if the answer is I'm trying to prove myself to others, because then again, at least you know what's
yeah.
driving you right now. Um, and then, yeah, the biggest thing I'd say to anyone, and I think this is really hard for most people because they've grown up being their own toughest critics.
Mm,
And you might know what I'm going to say here, but it's treat yourself as well as you would treat a friend. Somebody that you like, somebody that you cherish, because our inner voices are horrible to
mm,
ourselves. Like we're quite mean, aren't we? I'm
yeah.
inviting you to
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
because
no,
I am completely.
yep, totally.
Yeah.
And I've
Um,
named my inner voice
have
and
you?
yeah, to try and have a conversation. And that's when the rational bit you were saying about earlier can come in. And rationally I can say, no, that isn't here's the facts and that isn't where I am.
Great.
But yeah, I remember reading somewhere that said if you name it, it takes some of the power away from it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the whole, yeah, name it to tame it. It's an imposter syndrome. And I love it that you've taken it. I love that you've taken it a step further and named it. I've got a kind of persona for my inner critic that I haven't given her, and it's a woman. I haven't given her a name, but she's like a composite of like a really stern head teacher. Like, yeah, just really stern and so judgy. I mean, so judgy. So again, if you think when you're judging yourself and telling yourself off of all of these things, it really erodes your confidence and it does not help imposter syndrome at all. So my suggestion would be just think if a mate came to me, if a friend came to me and said, "Oh, I've done this and la la la, what do you think?" And I think I'm not very good. What would you legitimately, what would you say to them? And I suspect it's a lot nicer than the sorts of things you'd be saying to yourself. Okay, so yeah, the final thing I'd say is a really simple one, but talk to other people. Don't be scared to talk to other people about how you're feeling, particularly peers who are doing similar roles to you. You don't have to be super vulnerable. I can't say that word, but you don't have to be super vulnerable. There you go. That's me being vulnerable. Um, but you can ask them, I'm experiencing this. Have you ever experienced anything like that? And normally it's a big moment of solidarity. And it's so reassuring that people you know who look great, who just really
Mm.
know what they're talking about, have experienced self-doubt. That can really help.